If you grew up in a conservative Christian context, you likely inherited your beliefs instead of choosing them. But luckily, I have a method for choosing beliefs that will help you untangle the pile of yarn on the floor that is those inherited beliefs. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So what happens in conservative evangelical churches, fundamentalist churches, is that somebody has a set of beliefs. They tell you that it is the only right way to believe, and that in order to be a Christian, you have to believe that. And if you don't believe that, you could be in danger of hell. And a lot of times those beliefs are based on the Bible, on their interpretation of the Bible. They'll say something like, the Bible says it, I believe it. But what they're telling you is, here's what I think the Bible says, my particular conservative interpretation. And if you don't believe it, you don't believe the Bible. And in those groups, the Bible is everything. And then one day you hear some information about the Bible that is opposite of what the pastor taught and is being told you by some scholar like Dan McClellan, and you realize, wait a second, they might have been wrong. Wait a second, I might be wrong. And then you start pulling at that thread and the whole thing unravels. There's a pile of yarn on the floor. So what do? Well, you've got to choose your beliefs, because that's really what you have to do as a Christian and a human in every way. And so to do that, you've got to collect some data, evaluate it, and then figure out what you believe. And the data you need is different than the data you find in science, right? You need religious data about beliefs. So you start, I think, with a piece of data that doesn't ever change. It's kind of static, a sacred text, whatever your sacred text is. You pull that out and you have whatever belief you're considering, you try to figure out what it said. And if it's the Bible, if it's this ancient spiritual text, you're probably going to need some help. You need to see what biblical scholars like Dan McClellan and Pete Enns say, what pastors help you, like me, help you take those academic ideas and put them into context and figure out, okay, this is what I think it says. But the Bible doesn't even come close to addressing everything, and it definitely doesn't tell you how to act in every way and in every situation. And so you need other sources of authority, and that comes from people you respect. People like your pastor or your neighbor or your aunt that you feel like is probably talking directly to God every day. And then people who have passed, like well-known philosophers and theologians. And you consult them, you ask them what they believe about the issue, and you add that piece of data. And then you use your logical brain to put it all together, because that's what you've got. And after you put all of that together into a belief, you say, okay, I think this is what I believe. But you're not done, because newsflash, spiritual belief should help you become the best version of yourself, help you find a purpose greater than yourself, and help you experience transcendence. At least a couple of those three things, if not all three. So you live that belief out in your life and sort of validate it by your experience. If it doesn't do one or all of those three things, it's probably not the right belief for you. And so you take that piece of data as well. And then, this is important, you either reevaluate it or don't, but the important thing is that you keep in mind this core concept. You might be wrong. That's actually the fatal flaw of the whole inherited belief system, is that it implies that that person or that organization is never wrong, that they have it all figured out, when everybody might be wrong. There's a huge disagreement about almost everything in regards to religion, and you need to keep that in mind, because that allows you to continue choosing your beliefs throughout your life, and that's what will help you not end up with a giant pile of yarn on the floor again. Because you see, your personal growth was stunted by that conservative religious community. They didn't help you learn how to choose your own beliefs. That's a lifelong task. It's something that doesn't stop. It's part of being human. And so this might be a little difficult at first, but it's gonna get easier. But the bad news is the same as the good news. There's no rush, because it's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong task. But the bad news is it's a lifelong task, and it's something that you don't get to the end of. There's not a moment where you get to the end of deconstruction, which is why I don't like the word. I just say choosing beliefs, because that's really what's happening.